So welcome to restorative yoga for grief. First, once you've got your props set up, first thing we're going to do is lie on your backs, chest up, so back on your props. Like so. And then your legs can either be stretched out in front of you, or they can be, you can use another prop to prop your legs up, resting your legs on them. Maybe your feet together, knees wide, what we call butterfly. Just taking a moment, you want to feel supported though. So you want to feel like your back is supported, legs are supported, however they need to be, just in a space that you can sink into a little bit. And that's kind of I think our first ground rule for practice tonight is it's your practice and you get to choose what feels good for you. So even if I suggest something, it's just a guide, and I just invite you to explore what you have in your home to support you. Things are a little bit different nowadays, not being in studios, so we get to get creative. And this is, I think, a good opportunity for that. So once you're settled in, this class I've designed specifically for grief because I think it's really important to name some of the things we're feeling. And regardless of what kind of grief you're experiencing, it's welcome here. I just want you to give yourself permission tonight, though, to go as deep as you want to go or not go at all. And I think that's one of the most scariest things about grief is that we think we have to just feel it all. And that's why we ignore it. And that's why we don't want to feel it, is because it feels like it's a freight train going to take us over. So tonight, give yourself permission to maybe go a little bit of the way. Maybe acknowledge one thought. Maybe feel one piece of something. But it's only a 15-minute class. I will call you out of it. Know that there's a container around that, and you can come out of that. It's always been one of the hardest parts for me is that I didn't want to go into something because I wasn't sure if I could come back out. Give yourself that permission to go into something and come back out. So as you settle in more, I invite you to just start to notice some sounds. Notice the sounds in your room. Maybe you notice the sounds in your building. You hear things outside. And then you notice yourself on your space on the floor. And you notice your props underneath you. And then I invite you to notice your body. Just start to be aware of what sensations you feel in your body. Maybe you notice your left leg. Maybe you notice your right arm. Maybe you notice your belly, your shoulders. Just notice the sensations without having to change them. Just notice them. Bring awareness to what's going on. And then you bring your awareness even further in and you notice your breath. And if it feels good, place your left hand on your heart and your right hand on your belly as you notice your breath. And then you take a breath into your right hand, into your belly, and you feel your belly expand. And again. And then take another breath into your left hand and feel your lungs expand. Your rib cage moves out. And then another breath, and you feel your shoulders maybe move slightly, your collarbones. And then again, another breath, and maybe you can move all three. Or maybe you just start to notice more space. And again. And then you can just relax your arms and return to your normal, comfortable breath, whatever feels good. But still noticing, do you feel a little more space when you breathe? All of that is actually our space to breathe that we don't even realize we have. And I think one of the things we're all so focused on right now is breath, because it's just a message that's plastered around, with masking and illness and everything going on. Something that feels like it's been taken away is our breath. So choosing to focus on it and choosing to notice, even just if it's just the slightest little bit more of space that you have to breathe, is offering really a gift to yourself. Not when you inhale, not when you exhale, not how long, but you get to choose the space and you get to choose all of those things. So what does that feel like for you? We will be moving through a few postures tonight, but I invite you just to notice what feels good. And so if you move into something and it doesn't feel good, you get to shift. That's actually what I think is really amazing actually about using Zoom for this, is that I don't have to see you, and it takes away that pressure I think people feel. So just move in a way that feels good, or stay in the spot. If you find something that feels good and you don't want to move, you don't have to. And maybe you just gently listen to my voice. Maybe you drift away. Maybe you just soften. These are a few moments that you get to choose. I was talking to someone this week, and we were exploring holding space and exploring grief a little bit. And I really realized why I love restorative yoga so much, because it's very, very similar to grief, and why I've paired them together. It's about choice. And again, I think right now, especially, we are all feeling like choice has been taken away in one form or another. So tonight you get to choose what feels good in your body. You also get to choose where you want to go with grief. And grief often feels like it was something that was thrown at us and we did not get to choose it. Whatever happened to cause the grief, whatever relationship or loss occurred, we felt like we didn't get to choose it. So tonight you get to choose what you're doing with it. So I invite you to take a deep breath in, sigh it out. And again, deep breath in, sigh it out. Maybe you can just soften somewhere. You don't have to change anything, but is there just some space in your body that you can soften? Maybe it's that space between your eyebrows. Maybe it's that piece of your chest between your collarbones. Maybe it's your feet. Take 5 more breaths here. And slowly, if you would like, if it feels good, you can shift out of this posture, or you can stay, and you can just rotate, keeping your props the same space that they're at. And you just move into a child's pose. So you bring your props in between your knees, hugging up into your belly, into your chest, and you just give them a hug, basically. So the exact reverse of what we were doing. And if you choose to do that, you just settle in. Again, maybe you need to shift your props, add more, remove, but do it in a way that just feels so supported. You get to choose what feels good in your body right now, what feels good for rest, and what feels good for support. And one of the things sometimes we hear about child's pose is that we hear it's a restful pose, but sometimes people feel like they can't breathe. So right now, you get to choose the way your props are positioned so that you feel like you have some space. And if it doesn't feel good, you can shift out of it. Another reason I love connecting grief with restorative yoga is because grief is scary because it feels like it's intangible. It feels like I said, it's a freight train going to run away. It's its own entity and we can't control it. And now, not that I think we should control it, but by pairing it with a body practice. So pairing it with restorative yoga where you're connecting inside your own body grounds it. And it makes it feel like you have a choice. It makes it feel like, okay, I recognize this sensation. I know I have this choice with my breath. I know I have this choice with my propping. So I have this choice with the feeling that I'm feeling. Sensations in our body are simply information. And sometimes it's our attachment to the sensations that create a lot of angst, but they're simply information. Grief is the same thing. Grief is information. It lets you know that you've loved. It simply means that you are love and that you've loved. Can you connect those things? Can you honor those things? The information that you are love and that you have love and that you have loved. And again, you get to choose. So just like sensations in our body, when we get to choose how we breathe, where we breathe, how much we breathe, we get to choose if we shift to a sensation or we lean into it, or we can soften the sensation. You get to choose with grief how much you go into it or how little. You get to choose its meaning. No one else decides that for you. And I know that is so hard because we have this messaging in our world that there's timelines and there's labels on grief and there's decisions people make about grief and there's certain real world consequences that we all experience. But at the end of the day, you get to choose. What does grief mean to you? What does your grief mean to you? Take 5 more breaths here. And if you're ready and you'd like to shift, keep your props where they're at. And you're going to move into something called deer posture. So one leg is out in front of you, 90-degree angle. One leg is bent to the side with your hip up against your prop. You can also have your legs just simply like a twist stacked on top of each other. And using the props in the same position, you're going to lean over them, giving them a hug. So similar to the child's pose, but on your side. And again, you're just noticing how you feel and noticing if it feels good for your body tonight or the space you're in. Giving yourself permission to come out if you need to. And shift back. Another beautiful thing about this practice is that there is no prescribed, quote unquote, prescribed shape. It gets to be whatever you choose it to be. And again, that aligns specifically with grief. There is no shape of grief. There's no timeline. There's no right or wrong. It is what we define it to be. So as you shift your body, as you breathe, as you explore your body shape, body posture, and the propping, maybe you allow that to help you explore grief a little bit. Take a deep breath in, sigh it out. Another deep breath in, sigh it out. And again, choose somewhere to soften. Choose somewhere. Choose somewhere. Maybe you notice some sensation. The reason I choose the word soften is because if we say let go or release or forget or give up, sometimes we want to fight that. And I don't want you to fight it. You don't want to fight it. You get to choose the intensity. And sometimes we want to hold on to things, and that's also okay. So soften just simply means soften. Release some of the intensity. Doesn't mean forget that it happened. It doesn't mean let it go completely. Take 5 more breaths here. And so if you moved into that deer shape, you're just simply going to gently, softly, slowly move to the other side. So same shape, just on the other side. If you chose to stay in one of the other postures, maybe you continue to stay. Maybe you shift, just even shift into something I haven't even mentioned. Sometimes it feels good. I do this. Sometimes I go to a class and I want to be in the environment, but I want to move my body the way I want to move. And we need to give ourselves that permission, because that is actually life. That we can be in situations and get to choose our body and get to choose our own boundaries. And get to choose how we use our energy, get to choose how we use our breath, how we take up space. No one gets to decide those things for us. It doesn't matter what class you go to. It doesn't matter what job you have. It doesn't matter the family you have or the losses and these experiences we've had, we still get to choose those things. So allow yourself to settle in whatever you've chosen. Take a deep breath in. Sigh it out. And again, deep breath in. Sigh it out. And go where you need to go. Explore what you need to explore. And sometimes that simply means just being distracted and letting our minds wander. And we having that compassion for ourselves and letting that happen too is sometimes the best thing we can do, is feeling safe enough to let our minds just go and wander. Knowing that the choice just to shift a little bit, and if you have to bring movement into something, you're allowed to. Or if stillness feels good, you can do that too. All of these things are choices. And all of these things are available to us at any time, in any given day, in any given class, in any given moment. Take 5 more breaths here. And if you want to come out of this shape, or again, if you want to stay, you're allowed to. But if you want to come out, you move most of your props off to the side, just keeping one prop, so a pillow or your bolster. And maybe you play around with it. And all you're going to do is come to rest with your pelvic bones, your hip bones, on top of the bolster or your pillow. So you're on your belly. So your bum is raised up a little bit. Coming to rest, maybe forehead on hands. Your arms can be cactused out in front of you. Legs together, legs spread apart. Just allowing basically the middle piece of your body to be supported by your prop. It's the other thing I love about restorative practice is that it teaches us that some of the things we took for granted that we thought were the way a shape was supposed to be is not necessarily the way it feels good in our bodies. We get to choose again. It's all about choice. You learn to explore and be curious what feels good. And give yourself permission that when you show up to a class of any kind, that things get to feel different even every single time. So what shape felt good or what movement, what breath felt good one time maybe does not feel good the next time. And in that same way, we can relate this to grief because, again, it is so scary when we want to choose to explore it, but not knowing what that means. And every single time it feels different. But that is normal. And that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. That is the nature of it. Because that is the nature of who we are as humans, is that we're ever evolving and expanding and changing and growing and shifting. So allow yourself to shift if you need to. Go into something and maybe it feels good. So you sink in deeper. And maybe it doesn't, so you shift. And that's why I invited you at the beginning to maybe keep some props around even if you weren't sure if you're going to use them. Because sometimes we don't know ahead of time how we're going to feel. And we want to know. Trust me, I know we want to know. We want to know. We want to be in control. We want to have these minutes and moments and times planned out. But sometimes we just don't know. So maybe in this space, you just start to notice, how does it feel to be grounded with, so our front side of our body is often the space that maybe not even consciously we notice is what we want to protect. That's why many of us often have our shoulders rounded around and we lean forward because we're unconsciously trying to protect our softest parts of our body, our chest, our breasts, our bellies. Those are the softest pieces, our heart, that we're trying to cover and not expose. And so sometimes when we move onto our bellies, maybe this is true for you, maybe it's not, but something to notice. Sometimes it can feel safe. Sometimes it feels restrictive. What's true for you? What did you notice if you moved into that space? And then what can you do about it? If you notice restriction, how can you shift or move a little bit so that it feels a little more free? And if you feel safe, how can you soften into that? Take 5 more breaths here. And when you're ready, again, leave your prop where it's at, and all you're just going to do is shift around and move onto your back. So your prop moves to your sacrum, the flat part of your back, the lower part of your back, just above your bum. Depending on what prop you've used, just shift around a little bit. You just want to feel a gentle lift now of your hip bones. Whereas before they were softened into your prop. Now you're just lifting them up gently. Maybe you need to choose a different prop for this, depending on how your body feels tonight. So you're going to create just a little bit of like a U shape in the opposite direction. Again, like legs straight out in front of you, spread apart, arms even, like they could be just, you could be a tree, just straight out. Maybe arms by your side. You get to choose just what feels good there. One of the things I encourage people to do in this practice is move between postures the same way that you felt at the very end of the posture. So that softness, that gentleness, that relaxation, that space where maybe you fell asleep in. That's how you choose to move in between the posture. And sometimes I recognize that's a very different feeling than we're used to. We're used to transitions. And this does not just apply to yoga. This applies to all of life. We're used to transitions as being harsh, as something that we have to forcefully control and do and be very demanding about. And sometimes they feel abrupt and forced upon us. So this is a time where you get to choose a transition that feels gentler, that feels softer, and you get to choose it. Maybe you don't choose it at all. You say, nope, staying here, done. And just notice again, same prop, just a slightly different shape. And how does that feel? What is the difference for you when you feel your chest on the ground versus when your chest is a little bit exposed? How does that feel? Can you take a deep breath in and sigh it out? And soften. And just notice where you're at. Take 5 more breaths here. And then slowly get ready for your Shavasana, which is called the final resting posture. And so traditionally, that's flat on your back, arms out, legs out. And if that feels good for you tonight, you can move into that. But maybe your final resting posture is what we were just in, or maybe it's one of the other postures, or maybe it's something completely different. Again, our theme tonight has been about choice. So you get to choose what rest means to you. And you get to choose what your final resting posture feels like. Choose something that really feels supported. Move into a space that you feel you can soften into. And just start to notice again your breath. Notice the inhales and the exhales. Notice your body. Notice the sensations in your body. Have they shifted? This is the time you integrate your practice. You integrate what you felt. And you have a few moments to shift out of the rest and shift out of maybe the distraction. Shift back into your body, back into this moment, back into your room. And take 5 breaths to slowly come out. Just noticing how you feel. Thank you so much for joining me in this practice tonight, and I look forward to another one. Um, the light in me honors the light in you. Have a good evening.